Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com runs down the major markets. Friday saw a bounce upwards, but can that momentum be maintained? Ross looks at crude and the US dollar. People's Party of Canada leader Maxine Bernier comments on the Bank of Canada 1% rate hike, inflation, and the Trudeau government's efforts to bring in a digital currency. Mark Leibovit, publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, checks in from Arizona. He believes copper may not be the hottest of commodities if the Republicans take the midterm elections. He also has a special offer for our listeners. Plus, at the end of the show, we'll have a company showcase update from American Manganese Chief Technical Officer Zarko Meseldzija. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMY.V, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com, where you'll find insightful market commentary and timely technical analysis. You can find him on Twitter at ChartsByRoss. Welcome back to This Week in Money.
Good to be with you, and another interesting week in just about every one of the markets out here.
Yes, we saw a nice bounce back by Friday. What's the big story on the stock markets?
Oh, well, there'll always be a story. That's the problem here. It could be inflation one week. It could be employment the next one. Day by day, they find a rationale for all of these price actions. And, I just always get back to the fact that we have trends, we have consolidations, and, you go through these processes of just backing and filling and setting up for the next moves. And as of now, we've had some pretty decent corrections. You take a look at everything from the highs in the stock markets back in November for the really buoyant ones, which were things like the Russell and the FANGs, who then became the downside players right into the spring. And now we've got these pretty good consolidations. I think if you take a look at the S&P, bottomed out pretty much a month ago. We had some nice capitulations, really hard oversold, and you've had two good tests of support. It's got the makings of a pretty decent bounce in here, and the tail end of this week was one of those. You say this is probably the third bounce off the bottom right now, and we'll see what kind of legs it's got in it. We did correct very nicely a 50% move from the COVID low to the highs of the first quarter of this year. Made a 50% correction as far as the S&P was concerned, and that's a pretty normal spot to find a decent bounce in here. And if I take a look at the big picture, coming from the 2009 low, which was the monthly capitulation number. We haven't had one of those in literally decades. We've since that bottom had some what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 really nice corrections down to the 50-month moving average. And the month of June, July here is a really good kiss of that support and a pretty decent spot to be looking for a nice little rally out of here. So I think we're ready to retrace maybe as much as a third of the decline that we've had from the highs of the year.
What's going on with crude?
Crude, take a look, similar type of action. You got that May high up at $130. and broke down just below the $92 level momentarily here in the last week or so. That also testing some pretty good support levels. I would then call this whole process a consolidation from the May high, and probably, we closed off the week at just under 98. I think the 110 area looks like a pretty good overhead resistance at this point. And if you take a look at the stocks like the XOP, the XEG, as far as the ETFs are concerned, those look like they're ready for a decent bounce here as well. So I got my springboard buy signals on the weekly chart for the XEG. So that's the Canadian oil and gas stocks. Pretty good chance for a rally. That one's around 13 and a half right now. Probably looking at $16 as a reasonable target.
What's happening on the gold front?
Really like what I'm seeing in here. We have had you get different levels and measurements as far as extremes are concerned. And as of this week, the gold has managed to put in a capitulation low, which is fairly rare. We've got less than 20 of those since the 1975 market when gold started trading freely in the U.S. So we've got a capitulation kicking in as of right now. Gives us an even better chance for a bounce than I was looking for 10 days ago. And I think the miners have the opportunity to bounce pretty well. Been a bad hit when you take a look at it. I mean, percentage-wise here, you got the GDX was just above 40 back 2 months ago. Traded this week down under 26. So pretty hard hit. The support level that had been broken was around $30. So might not get back that far, but probably the $28 to $29 level is a reasonable target for the GDX.
What's the story with the U.S. dollar and the Canadian dollar?
Well, you got the inverse as far as the dollar index is concerned and what we've seen in gold. We're right into the tail end of this week, 3 days in a row. I've got upside exhaustion alerts as far as the dollar index is concerned. We had that type of thing back a month and a half ago, and at which point the dollar index corrected back from 105 down to 102. Nice support there, and now made the run to 109. At this point, it's, say, once again into an overbought level within this uptrend. So look for a correction there to the downside, sort of the inverse of the corrective rally that we'd be looking for as far as the precious metals are concerned. And the Canadian dollar, I mean, with the pop in the Bank of Canada interest rate move of a full 1%, did not have much in the way of an impact here as far as the currency was concerned. We closed off the week here at 76 3/4. That's a new low close on a weekly basis, going all the way back into 2021. So for all the Bank of Canada is doing what they are trying to support the currency with interest rates, it's really not having much of an effect. And even with the oil market bouncing back at the tail end of the week, Canadian dollar not really getting a benefit out of that. If we take a look over at the agricultural side of the equation, the DBA, which has been under pressure down from 23 down to just under 20, that's not helping out the Canadian dollar either. So unless you got a pretty good rally here, as in the ag side and in the crude oil. I think the Canadian dollar just continues to be range bound with some pretty good overhead resistance in it.
Ross, thank you so much for the update.
It was a pleasure to be with you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark from chartsandmarkets.com. You can find him on Twitter at ChartsByRoss. Coming up, Maxine Bernier next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com. This Week in Money is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
Welcome back. My guest is Maxime Bernier, founder and leader of the People's Party of Canada, online at peoplespartyofcanada.ca. He's the host of Mad Max Live on Rumble, and you can follow him on Twitter at Maxime Bernier. Max, welcome back to This Week in Money.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be with you, Jim. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mad Max Live?
Yes, we started that show a couple of months ago, and it's growing. I'm very happy with that. As you know, we were on YouTube, and now we try to be more on Rumble and other platforms that are more for free speech. But it's a way for me to have an interview with somebody, speak about what happened in the news. So I really enjoy that show, and our viewers are growing.
This week, the Bank of Canada raised the bank rate by a full point to 2.5%. It's been a long time since the bank rate has been raised by a full point. What is this likely to mean for the Canadian economy, the Canadian dollar, and especially real estate?
That's a very bad news, you know. The Bank of Canada thinks that when they're doing that, it's to stop inflation, but they won't be able to stop. We have a high level inflation, the official rate 7.7%, as you know, but the real one must be more than that, maybe about 12%. And the way to fight inflation is to raise interest rate. But now the interest rate is at 2.5%, but they won't be able to do that. They need to raise interest rate more than the inflation rate. But when the Bank of Canada is doing that, they're creating an inflation. So I believe that we will be in a stagflation. So that means a recession and inflation. So economically, it's not a good news.
We're hearing predictions of interest rates going into the double digits. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I believe that inflation will be officially in double digit. I believe that the real inflation is about 12%. I believe it's there right now. For the interest rate, I believe that it would be difficult for the Bank of Canada to raise the rate to stop inflation because, you know, we're not like in the 1980s. Debt is everywhere. You know, the government have a huge debt. Canadians have huge debt also, and corporations. So if they raise interest rates to a double digit, that will a lot of people will be in bankrupt, will have a lot of bankruptcies. So I don't believe they will be able to go that. Before that, they will raise interest rate maybe to 3%, 4%, and that will create a recession. But what people must understand, why are we in that situation right now? It's because of the conservative and the liberals, because what they did the last 2 years, they created a big deficit, $450 billion, and the Conservative Party with Pierre Poilievre approved all that, and they said, yes, lock down the economy, we're going to give money to people to stay at home, money that we don't have, and the Bank of Canada will be the ATM machine for the federal government. And that's what happened. The Bank of Canada created out of thin air $450 billion. When you have more money in circulation, chasing fewer goods, you have inflation. You must balance the budget first and have an inflation target for the Bank of Canada of 0%. But next couple of months, very difficult for every Canadian because of the bad policies.
With significant debt and inflation, is there still a way for Canada to return to a gold standard on its own, or would we have to wait for the U.S. to also implement a gold standard for its currency?
But I believe it would be an international decision. But yes, we can try to go more with a sound money. And now we have a fiat money system. The Bank of Canada and all these central banks can print a lot of money out of thin air. And I believe that we'll see a change in the international monetary system with maybe a new money or a couple of currency that would be based on maybe gold or maybe natural resources. I don't know. But I believe in the next 10 years, you may see a change in that for sure.
Pierre Poilievre shows up in the archived internet on the World Economic Forum website. We're hearing his name was scrubbed from the site in 2021 prior to his run for the Conservative Party leadership. His campaign manager, John Baird, Jean Charest, and even Stephen Harper are on the World Economic Forum website, along with Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, Jagmeet Singh, and many other politicians across Canada. What are your thoughts on politicians at all levels of government in Canada being members of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum?
Well, that's another proof that they are globalists, and they believe in that socialist organization, that ideology. And I'm not. I'm not part of that. I don't believe in that. Our goal is to promote our country first and fighting for our country. Not international. We don't want international organization to dictate to us what we have to do. That's why we are against the UN Compact on Migration. The Conservatives are not against that. They want to have mass immigration and more immigrants like these other establishment political parties. We want sustainable immigration. That's why we won't sign the Paris Accord. We're not globalists. But Poilievre and the Conservatives will respect the Paris Accord. They won't impose a carbon tax, but they will impose more regulation on businesses, and that will have a cost for Canadian consumers. So the people can trust the People's Party. We are a populist party that will fight for Canadian first and not these globalist organizations. And I just want to add, Jim, I was in Davos personally in 2008 because at that time I was Foreign Affairs Minister. And at that time, I wanted, and that was the goal of our government, to have more support because we were in war in Afghanistan. And as you know, our Canadian forces didn't have and still don't have the right equipment. And so I was there to beg and to ask my counterparts, other Foreign Affairs Ministers, and all of them were there to assist at that conference, the World Economic Forum at that time. And that was, very efficient for me. I was there 2 days. I had a meeting with my counterpart. I asked them to help us in Afghanistan. I was successful. And after these meetings with them, I left. So I'd never assist at the conference at the World Economic Forum. And, but I was in Davos at that time to be able to have all these meetings at the same time with my counterpart. So that's why, people on the internet and social media are saying, oh, Bernier is also a globalist. No, I'm not. Look at our policies. And if you want to judge something, judge that politician by his or her policy. And so, Poilievre is for the UN. Poilievre is for the World Economic Forum. Poilievre is for the World Health Organization. We are not. We will cut the UN. We will save $1 billion there. We will have policies done by Canadians for Canadians and promote our country first. So that's the People's Party.
What do you think it'll take for Canada, the provinces and cities to no longer be under the influence of the World Economic Forum and its members?
Yeah, they are very efficient, I must admit, Schwab and all his people to promote their ideology, their globalist ideology. And so the way to do that is just not to be part of that organization. And nobody, candidates or candidates elected members of parliament, they won't be part of that organization. We must do the opposite. We must promote Western civilization values. We must promote individual freedom and personal responsibility. We must promote a smaller government that will respect our constitutions, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So that's the People's Party. We are doing that. If you have a smaller government, you will have more freedom and you'll have more prosperity. So that being said, the World Economic Forum, their goal is to have a big government that will manage everything in your life, and maybe a world government. And so no, for us, we're saying no to that. And you can look at the platform of these other establishment political parties. They are supporting the UN. They are supporting the World Economic Forum. They are globalists.
Voter fraud's becoming an issue at all levels of government around the world. What's the best, most transparent way for elections to be run?
Like we did in the past, people must be able to vote in person. We must be able to see their face, and they must be able to show an ID with their face and their address. And we must stop promoting mail-in ballots. That's the only way to be sure that we'll have a fair electoral system, and we are promoting that.
Are SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, where you own nothing and be happy about it, being ushered in to deliberately destroy Canada?
But their goal is to destroy Western civilizations, like I said before, not only our country, with that socialist ideology, that world government that they want to impose. And so we must speak about that. And we are the only party that is speaking about that. But also all that woke ideology, for us, a little boy is a little boy and a little girl is a little girl. So wokeism is everywhere. But don't ask that question to Polyev and the conservative or the NDP. They don't speak about that because they're afraid. They're not there to defend our civilization. We are there to do that. So that's a part of fighting for our sovereignty as a country.
Who signed Canada onto Agenda 2030 and why?
Yeah, that started by Brian Mulroney, and after that Stephen Harper. Every last government signed on the UN agenda. So the last one was Trudeau for sure. But before that, Harper was in line with the UN agenda also.
Is the push for more and more immigration a World Economic Forum thing?
Oh, absolutely. It's a UN thing. It's a World Economic Forum. They don't believe in a nation state. They believe that, we must not have borders and everybody must be able to come to Canada. We are the only party, again, that is for sustainable immigration. And we need to be sure that, they will respect our borders. And we must stop what happened in Quebec right now at the Roxham Road when people are crossing illegally our borders. And so it's a privilege to be Canadian. And we must be sure that we are doing a right selection of our newcomers, of our immigrants. That's why we believe in sustainable immigration. We are saying no to mass immigration. And when you have 450,000 immigrants every year, that's mass immigration for a country with 38 million people. 450,000 a year is the population of Nova Scotia every 2 years. We are adding a Nova Scotia in Canada every 2 years. And the worst of that is 75% of them are not economic immigrants or skilled immigrants. That will help us to build our economy. But, people, refugees and fake refugees that are crossing the border at the Roxham Road, I don't believe that people who are coming from the state of New York, I don't believe that their life is endangered there. So we must stop that. And also people coming on the reunification of family. We need to have people that will come here and help us to build our country, working with us, sharing our values. And so that's why we want to have fewer immigrants, about 150 a year. But the majority of them must be skilled immigrants. So not 450,000 a year, where the big majority, 75%, of them are not skilled immigrants.
Canada is a resource-rich country. In the 2022 budget, the Trudeau government is going to end flow-through financings for the oil, gas, and coal sectors effective March 31st of 2023. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Trudeau is doing everything to destroy the oil and gas industry. I'm not surprised about that. We must do the opposite, and we will. We must promote the oil and gas industry. That would be good for Western provinces, for Alberta, for Saskatchewan, but that would be good for all the country, every province, because, you know, we'll have more prosperity. And also, that will help to unite our country. So Trudeau is doing, he was very honest about it. I must admit it. You know, he said that he wants to phase out the oil and gas industry a couple of years ago. And we can judge him by his action, and he's actually doing that.
In the 2022 budget, the Trudeau government says it's moving forward with digital currency. Your thoughts on that?
That will be another, authoritarian measures, and we must fight that. And you're right, the Trudeau government put aside $17 million for the next 3 years to promote and to work on the implementation of a central bank digital currency. I'm against that. We are against that. We don't need that. That would be another way for bureaucrats and politicians to control us. They will know everything that we are doing, every money that we are spending. That would be an important control on us. And so we must say no to that, and we are saying no to that.
Did the Rogers outage point out the dangers of relying purely on digital currency?
Yeah, absolutely. We must, we must, be able to have access to cash and have access also to interact. But we don't need to be efficient. We don't need another layer of control with the digital currency coming from the coming from the central banks. So I think people understand that, cash is important. We need to have cash in our pockets, if we want to be sure to, buy what we want to buy. But also the technology is there. It's great when it's working. And last Friday, we saw what happened. And, I'm looking forward to know more details about what happened with Rogers last Friday.
In the 2022 budget, Trudeau's still trying to take guns away from licensed gun owners. Your thoughts?
Yeah. We're gonna do the opposite. We believe that, peaceful and law-abiding gun owner, must not, lose their guns and their property rights. I think it's so important. So the best way to fight criminals is to put more resources at the border, because all the crimes that happen in our country they're doing that with illegal guns, not legal ones that are registered. So we will be sure that we will repeal everything that Trudeau did concerning guns, and we believe that Canadians can have guns, and there's a great system. You need to do some courses. You have an investigation by the RCMP before having your permit. So the regulation on guns is very different in Canada than in the U.S., and people must be able to go and practice their sport.
Does it look like the climate change narrative is designed to destroy the Canadian economy based on what we used to call the weather?
Yeah, that's why we won't sign the Paris Accord, and climate is always changing, and CO2 is a gas that it's important for life, and that's the food for plants, and so that we are the only party that said we won't do anything on climate change. We won't sign the Paris Accord. The Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre are approving the Paris Accord, and they will put goals to achieve the Paris Accord. We won't do that. We need to do other things for the environment that we can control. Like, we still have lakes that are polluted in Canada, clear air, lakes, and I think we must put our money there. Concrete action for the environment.
There's more and more negative information coming out on the forced, coerced experimental injections. What could this experiment mean for the future of Canada and the people of Canada?
Yeah, I said that, in the beginning of the pandemic, in May 2020, that we must be free to decide the medical treatment that we want as an individual. That was not the case. So, we must fight for our freedom of choice. And, actually, we are doing that. But, we had a little victory on the vaccine passport. But these vaccine passports can come back this fall or next winter. So you can count on us. We will always fight for freedom. That's part of our funding principles. Individual freedom, personal responsibility. Because when you're free, you must be responsible of your actions also. And fairness and respect. These are the funding principles of the People's Party of Canada. And we will always have policies that are in line with these principles.
Canada supposedly is at full employment with jobs that aren't getting filled. Where did all the people that were working prior to COVID go?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question. But now it's a little bit more difficult. With that recession, I believe that we are in a recession right now. That will be confirmed in the next couple of weeks. And more businesses now, are losing money with the interest rate that is increasing. That will be a difficult time for Canadians, and I believe that, if you have a job, I hope that everybody will be able to have a job. But the unemployment rate is going up a little bit, and that's because of the bad policies by the federal government. So let's hope that people will be able to work for themselves, for their family, and being able to bring food on the table. But time would be tough for everybody.
Electoral District Associations, also known as EDAs, what are they, and are there advantages and disadvantages to having one on each riding?
Yeah, so for us, it's a part of our party, like all the others parties. We have EDAs, a riding association in every riding. But what we want to do as a political party, something very different. We want to have regional EDAs, so a riding association that will represent more than one riding. I think it would be more efficient, and I think that's a solution for us. And so we are going through that direction as a political party. So, for example, on the island of Montreal, there's a lot of ridings over there, but instead of having 25 riding associations, we'll have one with more people on the board, and would be more efficient like that.
Is Bill C-11 designed to cover up crimes of the government? And what exactly is Bill C-11?
Yeah, C-11 is the bill that wants to control what we are saying on social media, and we are against that. That was the former Bill C-10, and like that, if you're a YouTuber or very active on social media and very popular, you have the risk to be regulated by the CRTC, paying a tax for this a new tax for the CRTC, and the CRTC would be able to regulate you and censor you if you don't say what they want to hear. So we must fight that bill. We have already censorship coming from the big tech corporation, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and now we'll have more censorship coming from the government. That would be very bad for our freedom of speech.
What are you Mad Max about today?
I'm mad about the economic situation. I'm mad about, the interest rate and the inflation. And I'm mad about that, and it's because of bad policies. And so, let's be realistic, and that's why I believe that the near future would be brighter for us. Maybe not tomorrow, but we need to have that common sense revolution, and Canadians can count on the PPC to do that revolution with them, peaceful revolution with them, to regain our freedoms and our Western civilization values, being the values that we want to share with everybody, not the socialist values or wokeism. So that's a big battle, and I'm ready, and we are ready at the BBC to do that battle.
Members who took part in the Truckers' Freedom Convoy had their bank accounts frozen by the Trudeau government. Is there a big fear for anybody opposed to the current government's policies that their money might be seized if you say something that Trudeau doesn't like?
That's a risk, and that, what the Trudeau government did, it's something that you do usually in authoritarian countries. And so it can happen, and that's why we must be sure that Trudeau understand that if he's doing that again, and I don't know when will be the next election, but we must vote for a political party that will respect our privacy and don't do what they did. They didn't have any reason to invoke the Emergencies Act, and Trudeau did it. It's a shame. That was a very sad precedent, and that's why people right now don't trust the government, and they have a reason for that, a good one.
Where can people follow you, the People's Party of Canada, and watch Mad Max Live?
Yeah, every 2 weeks I have the Mad Max Live on YouTube, on Rumble, on other social media, and also they can follow me on Twitter, Maxine Bernier. They can go on our website, People's Party of Canada. They can read our platform and be informed about what we are doing. They can also ask for our newsletters. Every week we are sending newsletters to our people. They will know more about us, about the BBC. And I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity to be with you today.
Max, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a nice day, Jim.
My guest has been Maxime Bernier, founder and leader of the People's Party of Canada, online at peoplespartyofcanada.ca. Coming up, Mark Leibovit, next on This Week in Money.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMY.V, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back. My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as vrtrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Mark, welcome back to This Week in Money.
Glad to be back.
Mark, do you have a special deal for our listeners?
Yes, we do. It's at the Leibovit VR newsletters, but the shortcut is vrtrader.com, V as in Victor, R as in Robert.com, and in the promo code section of the order form, you simply add 2022 half off, just as it sounds, 2022 HALF, and get 50% off. Also, I want to disclose that I am not a financial advisor, nor do I provide financial advice.
This week, the Bank of Canada increased its bank rate by a full percent to 2.5%. The Fed meets up on July 27th. Could they also increase their central bank rate by a full percentage point?
Yeah, that's been the story the last few days, Jim. Suddenly this popped out of nowhere. It was supposed to be 0.75 and then 1, and some people saying, why don't they just go up a couple and get it over with? I mean, my position is that it's all irrelevant anyway, and the Fed is an irrelevant, arcane institution which shouldn't even be around anymore, creating more problems than positive results, unfortunately. But we get into a whole discussion about that, and the famous book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, which describes the creation of the Fed and everything that's wrong with it. I post that on my website every day, and I did mention the previous interview, there was some talk from some member of Congress that maybe we need to look into the Fed and see if they're really fulfilling the objectives that they really created to fulfill, which you and I know is not the case. So their goal is supposed to be full employment, and they don't necessarily supply that. And we have recessions. I can't count how many. I think 18 or something to that effect.
According to Bob Hoy, yes.
Yes. So, I mean, what good are they except a lot of trouble? The free market should determine rates, just like it does everything else, but apparently government has to stick its nose into everything we do, and even the Fed's involved in the stock market, which nobody talks about. I mean, I listen to the financial news all day. I mean, they're involved with buying and selling the S&P 500, and if it's not them, it's through the U.S. Treasury, and through the Plunge Protection Team, which is the working group of financial markets executive order that Ronald Reagan signed into effect in 1988. And their involvement in the stock market, buying individual stocks and bonds and all kinds of crazy stuff, which has been disclosed through the Freedom of Information Act, and some of it they've actively talked about. So the whole thing is just a silly old game, and they raise it a point, and they get the market to come down, which was one of their goals, and then things get so bad, then they got to go the other way to jack the market back up again. And what does this have to do with inflation and supply shortages and geocosmic issues, crop problems, growth cycles, all kinds of planetary issues that affect all kinds of things relating to pricing? And there's so many things going on here that they have no control of, including, Putin, or what China is going to do or not do, what Iran is going to do or not do, and what Saudi Arabia is going to do. Not do. I mean, all the news stories, you just banded all day with this stuff. And, what's the total focus is on the Federal Reserve. And you refer to the Bank of Canada, like these people control the world. And I guess if everybody believes they do and react accordingly, then at a certain level, I guess that's the case. But, it's really, I really can't predict whether they're going to raise it, whether they're going to go more aggressively, how long it's going to go on. There's external effects, the things that could hit. We have China locking down again. We've got so many variables out there. What we've learned in the last couple of years is a lot of black swan or outlier events that suddenly change things dramatically. And if there's some dramatic event, maybe we find out in 2 weeks the Fed suddenly has to stop raising rates and go the other way because there's some dramatic event that you and I haven't even figured out yet. Nobody will figure out till it happens. So I suspect there are those who do know, because there's a lot of stories out there, as you know, that before even the COVID, there was word out that it was coming, and to get prepared, and a lot of executives had resigned from positions in 2019 ahead of some supposed big event that was coming, and there's a lot of research and discussion about that whole story. So, what we have here, Jim, we have a big manipulative game that, we're like puppets on a string, and we're just like we juggled around by the big boys and what games they want to play. There's even talk about depopulation of the planet in the next 20, 30 years, like a goal to try to reduce the amount of people here, either through viruses or war or whatever, or conversion into socialism. And the whole thing is, because that would create enough stress. Probably we lose a lot of lives just on that. Look at all the stress we had during the COVID event. So anyway, so much nonsense going out there. So what am I trying to say? I mean, it's a game. We're playing a game. Yeah, should you buy stocks now? Should you sell your house now? Should you buy a house now? Should you go short the market again now because of what these guys are going to do or not do in a couple of weeks? So, one of the things I try to do, and I guess, I've been reasonably successful with, not every trade is there, is, calling the market for the last 43 years and seeing, where we're at, and, usually the tape sort of tells you things are coming because, we were talking last October, November, get the hell out of the market. It was going down, and I published some pretty astronomically low numbers, which at the time appeared to be astronomically low, and then they've been fulfilled. So I think, the tracks in the sand are there. The people in the know, and you see it in the stock prices, you see it in the technical action, and that's all you can do here. Just play the game with these big boys because they're profiting from it. I mean, you think they make money on the short side, knowing the Fed was going to do what it was going to do, or others profited because they knew COVID was coming, or they knew some vaccine was going to come out or not come out. I mean, this is all in the tape, so to speak, so there are no secrets out there.
Is the big story the U.S. dollar? It's looking toppy here, and how long does it look long term?
Yeah, well, see, my other big story that I keep talking about, it's not only my story, is, the answer is yes, it is toppy, but, it was toppy, let's see here, about May 13th, and it dropped for about 10 days, had a nice correction. It was toppy on June 14th, and it dropped about another 6-7 days, and then took off again. And now it's toppy. We hit a little top yesterday, Thursday, and some of the technical stuff says we're toppy here, and it should pull back. And there's some gaps on the chart that could be filled. So once that comes down, that helps commodity prices, that helps the stock market. But the big picture, as I was alluding to a moment ago, is the war, which is possibly spreading in Europe. And it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. It could be a 1.5 or 2-year comment, but we're funding the enemies of Putin. Tremendous amount of money is being spent on the part of the U.S. NATO is trying to increase its strength by new countries joining it, and that doesn't make Putin very happy. And, instead of defending our own border here in the U.S., we're sending money to Ukraine. The Democrats are looking to create a war. For years, Hillary Clinton and I call them Democrats, not Democrats. I mean, they're looking to fight with Russia, and they're going to lose because Russia's got a lot of stuff in its favor, and apparently they think they're not going to lose, and that's why they're going to challenge them. They want to destroy Russia. And the reason is simple, because he wants to be independent. He wants to create and expand his own country to its former glory and borders, and he doesn't want to join the one world movement that Klaus Schwab, the Nazi, and George Soros, have planned for us. And the Democrats apparently have joined forces along with a lot of Europe. So that's going to create a big conflict. And what's going to happen then? Well, the dollar will probably go higher because they'll flight into safety. It may be the last horse in the glue factory, as the expression goes, but it's probably the only safe one at that moment on the planet. So if that unfolds in the next year or two, you're going to see possibly a much stronger dollar. So we'll just have to see if all those dire predictions that I'm making pan out. But for now, it is a little overbought here, and it certainly could have a 5 or 10 day correction, and that would help the stock market, which is in a rally phase here, which is somewhat predictable because we're very oversold and we're in a seasonally positive period right now, July, August. That no guarantees, but over time you get this quote-unquote summer rally, and you might get a nice technical bounce, but I think it's short-lived, but it is tradable.
What do you see ahead for crude oil and unleaded gasoline?
Well, it depends on what Biden can do, with regard to the Iranian agreements or the Saudi Arabians, and whether he changes his mind and lets some oil and gas production resume in the continental U.S. or suddenly change. He wants to get reelected. He wants the Democrats to get reelected, or those who are up for election elected. Of course, his election's a couple years off, but the polls are really low. They got to pull a rabbit out of the hat that they could drive gas prices down dramatically, or suddenly he changes his mind temporarily and the stock market explodes, and the Democrats, don't lose all the seats in Congress or Senate that they're predicting. I guess that could be a short-term goal for them. So, the answer is they could be working to drive crude oil lower for political reasons, and that makes a lot of sense, and there was a big trading top there. Big picture, I'm very bullish on crude. I think it's got huge numbers ahead of it because of the attitude to get rid of crude oil in favor of electric vehicles and the so-called green movement. But, on that basis, there's going to be shortages in the future unless, like I say, the party line completely changes and they let all the local production resume as before. Who knows? They may pull a rabbit out of the hat and pull that just for the election. We'll see. But, I'm bullish on crude oil overall. And, if we get a little pullback here in the dollar, as we just discussed, let's say that unfolds here for a few days or a couple of weeks or whatever, crude oil could continue to rally because it is priced in U.S. dollars, and that could be, a nice little tradable rally, and then perhaps we'll have to tie this all into the November election, which is a long way away, but will it rally for a while, then come down again afterwards or just before? It all depends on these political and non-political moves. but the top, it did come in. A trading top did come in, but I would suspect that we hit a trading low here, and we'll get a bounce for a while, particularly if the dollar pulls off.
What's happening with the agricultural markets?
It bounced back a little bit because the dollar backed off a little bit. So I still think, there's a lot of bear comments out there, but, there are shortages of food in many places. Some of the smartest people are saying stock up if you can. Some places are going to be affected more than others. So both from a climate point of view, fertilizer point of view, cyclical point of view, the next couple of years still look very positive to me in terms of agricultural pricing, but due to the shortages and particularly if war does unfold. So, it's a question of whether I'm giving a trading comment for 2 days or my overall view. On a trading basis, it'll probably rally if the dollar pulls off, just like crude oil would and just like gold would. And beyond that, I still think, there's a bull case for agriculture regardless, but short-term little bounce, and then we'll see what the dollar does. But overall, I'm a bull on the whole commodity sector.
Could supply chain issues be fixed fairly quickly?
I have no idea, Jim, honestly. I don't know that's all behind it. I know there's a lot of truckers that were blocking Long Beach, I read the other day. There's still many ships that are not unloaded. It just depends on, is this a political decision? Obviously things are holding up the bottleneck here, and policymakers want to clear up some of the bottlenecks that can get things moving pretty quickly. And I suspect that might be the case as we get closer to an election here in the U.S. So, but I did notice of semiconductor stocks are trying to rally here. Some of the supply issues in the semiconductors seem to be improving a little bit. So there might be early signs that some of that might be cleared up, because I read or heard there's thousands or tens of thousands of vehicles that are, that can't be completed for delivery because of the lack of the semiconductors. I know Taiwan Semiconductor is in the process of trying to build a huge plant here in Phoenix, whether that's because of the fear of a Chinese takeover in Taiwan. It may have something to do with that, of course, but, it's going to take time until that supply comes online. But there will be a huge, might be one of the largest in the world being built right here outside of Phoenix. So, short term, I don't know, the current status depends on which product you're talking about. It still exists out there. You're still hearing about problems. So I would assume it's a solvable problem, but no time. And, unfortunately, if we get into more military conflict and stuff, that could reassert itself too. So again, the question is it a trading comment for 2 days or an overall comment? I don't think we've solved the supply issue so fast. I think there's going to be more time related to that, but there are some positive signs starting to show their head.
Could June 17th turn out to be an important stock market bottom?
Well, that's what it is so far on the charts. I think it's a tradable bottom. We've seen it zigzag and come off that low. It was one of my targets, by the way, the S&P. I was looking for the mid 3600. So first I was looking for the 38 level and then 36. My next level, by the way, is 3200. And then beyond that, maybe even as low as 2100 or 2200. That's why I've been writing even from current levels. The S&P could be cut in half, and that could be in the next, year and a half or so. I can't predict the exact amount of time. It could happen even sooner, but that's an overall technical comment. So yeah, that was a trading low, a cyclical low, and how high we're going to go is a tough call. Depends how much the dollar pulls back, all this other kind of stuff, and see what other news events unfold here, whether Biden does something dramatic and the Democrats do something dramatic. It all would play into it. And of course, everybody's holding their breath, as you said a moment ago. The Fed meeting coming up the end of the month. Are they going to do 1%? Are they going to give the market a surprise and not raise rates at all or do less? Depends on what puppets is pulling what strings. The powers that be say, hey, we got to get the stock market to rally here a little bit. Too much damage has been done. Hey, you guys, why don't you just not raise rates on this meeting or do less and help us out a little bit, because us traders, who control the market, along the market here, we want to make some money, so why don't you play along with us? And it sounds like an extreme statement, but anything is possible out there in a manipulated world. But yeah, a lot depends, of course, on what the Fed doesn't do, and then how the so-called financial press interprets it. It's 1 point, they got it out of the way, great, that's bullish, let's buy stocks. Or others could say, no, that's worse than expected, and it's going to go lower. It all depends on how the powers that be, massage the news and where the market is technically. So it seems like they're trying to rally the market, but I don't want to, I would say don't fall in love with the upside. Like, it would be my bottom line comment here. I mean, there's trades, but don't fall in love with it, because I still think we're in a bear market, but we also get huge bear market rallies. So we just, for example, today we went long the S&P, but we also looked to take a real quick trade in it because we're going into the weekend, and I don't like holding positions in the weekends. And we can always, jump back in or do something Monday or Tuesday. We have turnaround Tuesday coming up. So, a lot of interesting stuff out there. By the way, today was options expiration too, which we did mention. And, markets, tend to improve during option expiration week. So today, we're making this recording on Friday, would partially explain the rally too, above all the other things that I previously mentioned. So the option expiration may have something to do with the little rally we saw today. We'll see if that carries over into early next week.
As more pandemic narratives are pushed, are the markets likely to care?
They always seem to care, but they shut down China completely, or some more serious news comes out. That's not good. That's going to do a lot of damage to your supply chain issue. Obviously. So there's a lot of stuff floating around here. What can I say? The bottom, I don't think the big bottom is in. There's some real big negatives potentially down the road in Europe. There's still shortages around. The hike in rates was a stupid thing to have done, but they've done it anyway, and that's creating a recession, maybe worse. So it's a good time to lay low. You know what I'm saying? That's what my feeling. Unless you're a trader, like we said, we jumped in on a trade here and there. We do a lot of that, but if you're waiting for the big low, I think you're going to have to be patient.
What's going on with banks in China?
I heard there was a run on some banks in one of the provinces, and people were trying to get their money out, and then the Chinese came out officially, said, well, that story is overplayed, and they didn't give all the explanation, but apparently some of the farmers couldn't get their money out of the accounts there, and I don't have all the details, and that made headlines for a couple of days, so I apologize. I don't have all the details of it. The Chinese government is trying to, play down that story. Listen, there could be runs on the banks here. I mean, we saw some during the financial crisis. Cash is king. In a desperate situation, desperate governments do desperate things like confiscate your money. Probably the safest place for your cash would be in U.S. Treasury, even though I think, Treasury and the bonds are not the safest thing long-term, short-term, near-term they are. So make sure, at least if you got cash, if it's not sitting in the bank, get it into some Treasury securities, even short-term ones.
Does it look like the deep state is trying to start World War III to cover up its crimes?
That would be part of the story. Yes, I would agree. Yep. Look at Ukraine. It's infestation of criminal activity. Not everybody in Ukraine is criminal, but we know the Bidens are criminal, and we've had labs that are producing viruses suddenly revealed to us in recent months, and there's a lot of nasty things going on over there. So including a lot of Nazi activity, which is what Putin is trying to clean up, I think. So I would agree that it is a problematic area and needs to be cleaned up now. Whether you need to kill all these people and invade the country and do all the damage that's been done, that's a whole other question, of course. So anyway, cleaning up Ukraine is a positive if it can be cleaned up, and I think Putin's trying to do that. So.
Is the United States at war now, a different kind of war?
Oh, good. We're clearly at war. I mean, we're sending $40 billion in aid to Ukraine and to, or not directly to Ukraine, to NATO. We're looking for war. I mean, these actions are not taken. I don't know if Donald Trump would have done this. It's the Democrats. They've been looking for war with Russia for a long time. And, you can blame Hillary Clinton and people like that. These people are insane. They're just looking to create a mess. And one of the reasons they're trying to do it is because the war, which they think I've already touched on this, which they think they can win, and particularly take Putin out. If they take Putin out, probably his successors could be worse, which is another whole other discussion. But, this prevents them from creating this one world order. I mean, you'll own nothing and be happy, according to Klaus Schwab. I don't think China would agree with that. China wants to control the world. They don't want to be part of Klaus Schwab's one world order, the Democrats' one world order in this country, or even though, of course, a lot of Europeans, including European Union, all seem to feel this way. Socialism is a big deal with them. So, the bottom line is they need this war to hopefully try to get rid of the enemy of their one world, the government plans. Whether they'll succeed or not in time, is to be seen. Honestly, I hope they lose. I hope Europe loses. Because what means that we're gaining here. That means the Democrats have lost, who unfortunately are not very positive people, in my opinion, based on their actions and what they're attempting to do, and and things they're not doing. Like I mentioned several times already, defending our own borders here in the United States and letting millions of people come in undocumented and letting them come in and say you don't need to be COVID tested. On top of that, give them money and everything else when us other regular citizens have to pay our bills and pay taxes. So, what can I tell you? There's plenty of enemies out there. We can find them, including the people running our government. You have the same problem in Canada. And, we just got the Fed to deal with, which is problematic. And, there are problems with the Food and Drug Administration in this country, the FDA. We have problems with the IRS in this country. I mean, there's so many institutions that need to be revamped or abolished. It's not a joke. So I just hope it doesn't lead to civil war in this country, Jim, because the country seems to be very divided. I don't know whether states will secede from the Union like happened before the Civil War, or whether we'll just have, everybody fighting each other here as different states doing different things. But it doesn't look so positive the way things are unfolding. So I'm a little on the doom side, though. I have to admit that if you look back over the last 200 years, the stock market has huge bear periods and always seems to come out of it eventually, because even the communists like to make money, and that I'm, of course, referring to the Chinese, because there's plenty of billionaires over there. So even though we may have some negative news a period, eventually, everybody likes to make money, and they don't all do it on the short side. So the market's probably eventually come out of this at some point in the future, but I'm not too optimistic for the next couple of years. So let's see what transpires. And meanwhile, if we can do some trades here, pay your bills, make some money, have some fun doing it, that's what it's all about to me. Long time ago, I said the stock market went to hell. What would I do for a living? But for some reason, no matter what happens in the world, whether it's COVID or war, the stock market seems to always be there. So we're going to have a lot of fun times ahead on both sides of the market.
Are we likely to see a bull market in electrical power?
Definitely. It's already starting now. Charging stations around the country, but the real bull market, I think, really needs to come from the uranium sector, because we need to build more nuclear plants. Unfortunately, there's a big lead time for that. I've read it can take up to 10 years with licensing, construction, and everything. But that's the source of power we're going to need to ultimately run all these EV vehicles that are being proposed, which will never be done in the next 10 years. It'll take more time than that. But the bull market and alternate energy, because that's the push. But, how do you power all the alternate energy vehicles if you don't have the power plants to do it? You know what's going on in Europe. I mean, they're refiring coal plants. Coal has come back. The realization came that suddenly we don't have the power we need. When the lights go out and you're freezing in the middle of winter, or you don't have air conditioning in the summer because you don't have power plants conforming to the way you think power should be generated. Obviously, you'll say the hell with it, get the coal plant running again. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of stupidity, particularly in Germany, the way they shut down all the nuclear activity. And, eventually, like I say, when the lights are out and there's no power and whatever, they're going to realize how stupid they were, and the world's going to realize that you got to go for the power wherever you can get it. And if you want to transition, start doing the intelligent thing, transition to nuclear.
Are people waking up to what the climate change and green narratives are really about?
I don't think so. I think they're brainwashed. I would like to think that they would get caught on that it's all play for money and power, and there's really nothing to do with what's really going on. I mean, we get into a long discussion, and I'm not as, even though I talk about the cosmic, we run through a lot of climate variations on the planet over to tens of thousands of years, which have nothing to do whether man was on Earth or not. And, we might be polluting in some places, but that's not changing the planet. And these things that we're seeing, in fact, some argue that there is no global warming, and it depends on where you're looking for the data. So it's a manipulation. It's on the one world government agenda. Control the world, let's control climate, let's control what people own, don't own, what they can say or not say. It's all part of the big game. I don't see Putin talking about it. I don't see the Chinese talking about it. It's basically the Europeans and the idiots in the U.S. Political scenario that are really banging the table about the green movement. Not so much the green movement, but the global warming and so forth. So I don't care if I upset anybody out there. I think it's all a bunch of nonsense with the global warming. So it seems to be part of the culture. Everybody seems to talk about it, everything. There's one thing trying to clean your environment and do things to provide clean energy and don't pollute the water and, stuff like that, and, create things that are safer for people to live around. But there's another thing to talk about a global warming scenario, which is nonsense.
Does it look like Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, where you will own nothing and be happy, is gaining ground or failing?
As Putin gets stronger, it's failing. And I think as the Democrats in this country hopefully lose some seats in Congress and the Senate this fall, that would be more on the failing side of the equation right now. I hope it does fail. I mean, it's bunch of nonsense. If you want to give everything you own to Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and his son, and all the people that are connected to it, I mean, basically they're going to make all the money and take all your money. So it has to fail, and maybe that's one of the reasons social unrest and civil war is a risk for us, because if it gains more ground, violence unfortunately will raise its ugly head here. Hope that doesn't happen.
The brightest full moon of the year, a supermoon, a buck moon, or thunder moon happened this week. Could that affect the markets?
It did. I mean, in fact, we talk about this all the time. We saw a little change of direction. The market took off a little bit. That's one of the reasons that, we're getting this, part coincidental reasons we're getting this little rally in the market this past week. So we had a lunar, there's a lot of times we see change of directions around not only the full moon and new moon and the eclipses, but we see it around the quarter cycles as well. Depends if you're oversold in the market, which we were, and that's where we got a little bounce. But like I say, I'm not holding my breath that we're starting a super move for many, many weeks to the upside. We'll try to trade it if it does happen. I think it's a seasonal, technical, or possibly even a manipulated bounce on the part of those who want to see stock prices go up short term. But the moon did have something to do with it, in my opinion. Sure, that's why I posted on the website. Keep an eye on the lunar cycles and see where you are. And I've done this now for got to be a good part of the full 40 years, ever since I heard McCavity be interviewed on the Wall Street Week TV program back in the 1970s, where he tied the lunar cycle to gold. And he we've discussed this before. I don't want to belabor the point, but basically, he had pointed out that you get market peaks on in the gold market around the full moon and so forth, which is not really the case. It can happen in any part of the lunar cycle, but that intrigued me to track it and to see if that applies to other markets, which does. Nothing's 100% certainly, but it does have a good correlation. So it's always good to keep it on your desk as one of the indicators that you keep an eye on, just like you would keep an eye on extreme bearish sentiment, extreme bullish sentiment, or an oversold or overbought market, stuff like that. All part, where volume and technical indicators are pointing. You try to put all the pieces together, stick it in the soup, stir it up, and if you do this long enough, most of the time you can call it.
Mark, before we go, can you just tell us a little bit about the VR newsletters and VRtrader.com?
Gee, that's a lot to talk about, Jim. I mean, it started as a volume reversal survey decades ago, became VR Trader when the internet came in. VR stands for volume reversal, which are many indicators I use, but the main one is basically defined as a change of volume and a change of price. So coming off the bottom or a top, it tends to be a good trading and even intermediate tool. And we did a bunch of newsletters. If you go to VRtrader.com, our top letter, which I would, for most people, would be the VR Platinum letter. It has nothing to do with platinum. That's the name of it, and it covers all the markets. And you get that to that 50% off the offer I gave earlier. And we have, a metals resource letter. We have a cannabis letter as well. We have our annual forecast model. It's really good. It's an annual report. It's on the website. Then we have actually one letter just called the market time letter, just to get a buy and sell signal for the overall market, which could be, days or weeks between signals. And of course, my book is available on the website too. For those of you who want to learn more about technical analysis, we created this book back in 2011, and it's the Trading Book of Volume. Covers all the major volume indicators, including mine. It's about 500 pages, and if you're into technical analysis, I've had a lot of good reviews with it. You might want to check that out. You can see that on the website. You can actually buy it through Amazon. It was published at McGraw-Hill. I was thinking of doing a second book. In fact, I haven't followed through on it, called How to Trade the Market Using the Volume Reversal Indicator. That's a very narrow focus, but there are a lot of traders who definitely want to look more about it. So I may resume that project near term. But thank you for mentioning the website.
Where can people find out more about our special offer today?
Go to VRtrader.com and pick up one of my or more, hopefully, if you want a few of the newsletters, and sign up for it and go into the promo. When you go sign up, there's a promo code, and the promo code you should use is 2022 half off, 2022 HALFOFF, and you get 50% off of any of the products for any time frame you select.
Mark, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jim.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRtrader.com. He was speaking to us from Arizona. Our conversation took place on Friday, July 15th. And that wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Maxime Bernier, and Mark Leibovit. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions for the show or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Now stand by for a company showcase update from American Manganese Chief Technical Officer Zarko Meseldzija. I'm Jim Goddard. We'll be back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on HowStreet.com.
I'm Jim Goddard. My guest is American Manganese Chief Technical Officer Zarko Meseldzija. Zarko, welcome to Company Showcase.
Thank you, Jim.
Zarko, talk about being close to the scene of the most action at American Manganese. You're at the new demonstration plant. Can you maybe describe the beast for us and what exactly it does?
Yeah, first I just want to apologize for any of the noise. I've tucked away into a quiet corner, but we're here, and I will get to more of the information in the demonstration plant, but I think one that every listeners are waiting to hear about is our latest press release, which was the life cycle assessment that was announced. And, that was announced under our new branding as RecycLiCo. And I just want to start off and say, what is the life cycle assessment and how did we get to these numbers and what was evaluated? And so from our end as a company, we took data from RecycLiCo and our flow sheet that was modeled in a software called Maxime. And within this model, there's over 1,500 streams of inputs and outputs in the flow sheet that account for every small detail within the process. And then that data was compared to a report, a technical report that was published in 2022 on the LCA study of recycled NMC cathode materials. And this competing hydromet process that's explained in this report is what we commonly see as the individual extraction of metals and then the further refining of those materials into precursors. And in short, as we see in the report, is that RecycLiCo produces 166% less CO2 equivalent emissions, or as we calculated, 17,000 tons of CO2 per gigawatt hour of NMC material recycled. Now you can imagine the scale of this and the savings when you extrapolate that number over the current and planned gigawatt production announced globally. And then this global warming potential really is just it's a baseline model that's used over just 100 years for greenhouse gases, and it's measured in the unit as kilograms of CO2 equivalent. And as for the primary extraction that we announced in the life cycle assessment, our comparison to primary extraction, or what we define as the traditional mining and refining, is we also see that this is lower, and this is based on a global average. So now we have these values, and we can more accurately compare them on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, if you're mining in certain countries, that delta or variance on the CO2 emissions can be even greater, as mining can be so spread out on a case-by-case basis. And then we also, in the LCA report, we received some questions on what it means in the fossil fuel depletion category, where we showed a little higher than the competing technologies. And here, throughout the report, the biggest contributor is the natural gas to our boiler. And this is a part of the process which is used as part of the lithium crystallization and evaporation phase. Now, you have to remember that this LCA, and like all the work and R&D work we do, is an iterative process, and it helps us, evaluate what the best commercial deployment strategy is, and it gives us a chance to see where we can improve without negative impact in another stream. So, for instance, maybe we can use electricity instead of natural gas, but then we have to also evaluate what are the cost implications and the other categories. Now, I know some listeners asked to read the full report, and there is sensitive information in that report, and we will look to do more deep dives on the details. We're happy to answer any questions and maybe even take some extracts to make publicly available. So stay tuned for that as we put these things together. And now, as a demonstration plant, if the noise isn't already driving you crazy, as I speak here, I can tell you the initial stages of the demo plant are running smoothly. And as we move from stage to stage, I'd like listeners to understand that there's going to be this element of learning and validating. And as we learn and validate, we're transferring this knowledge towards the commercial design. And we already are in discussions with equipment suppliers regarding these commercial design requirements, kind of what is available at certain sizes, and as we put all of this together. So it's good that we learn it at this scale, so as we get bigger, we know we have everything is right and to the accurate size. Now, this is, remind people this is a one-of-a-kind plant, and we're not sitting idle. Right now, throughout the operation, we have day shift with 8 operators, and night shift we have 6. And I can say, as I see it myself, everyone's working really hard around the clock, making this happen. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that's happened here. As now I look at the demonstration plant and how far we've come. So we'll be providing updates as they come. And I think that's it for me, Jim. Thank you.
Zarko, for people new to American Manganese, what does the company do, and how can they find out more information about it, and where are you traded?
Yeah, so with American Manganese and transitioning here to RecycLiCo, we are a battery materials company focused on our recycling and upcycling of lithium-ion battery materials, or waste lithium-ion battery materials. And you can find information on us at www.americanmanganese.com, as well as www.recyclico.com. And we are traded under the ticker symbol AMY on the TSXV, AMY.V on the OTCQB, and 2AM on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange.
Zarko, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been American Manganese Chief Technical Officer Zarko Meseldzija. I'm Jim Goddard. Our conversation took place on July 15th.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.